Welcome back. My name is Harupiku. The game was Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, this is the part of the show where I try and get my thoughts in order and tell you what I thought about the game, my experience recording it, all the fun stuff. So, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not the hardest person in the world to please. I'm also going to say I went very much out of my way to avoid any sort of spoilers for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And I'm glad I did. Because that ending, though, like fish moly, that ending was amazing. Alright, so let's start at the beginning. At first, the Final Fantasy VII Remake just seemed like a touch-up, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself, because the original came out in the mid-90s, so I think it was 96, but my goldfish memory is failing me once again, so I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, the polygons, everything could use a touch-up. So if the Final Fantasy VII Remake was just a touch-up here, a new line of dialogue there, that would have been fine. At first, the change from a turn-based system to a more action RPG system, even though you could change it, supposedly, even though I never dabbled with the classic style. It threw me off a bit, not gonna lie. But eventually, I got used to it, as you get used to all new things eventually. So, as the game progressed, it slowly dawned on me that while things were taking place in the same vein as the original Final Fantasy VII, there were numerous little things that caused me to start viewing it as its own thing. But it was the ending. The last fight with the Whispers and Sephiroth and the cutscene after that made it really sink in. Holy fish moly, Final Fantasy VII Remake is not beholden to the original Final Fantasy VII. It may take place in a similar universe, but already things are shaping up to be wildly different. Like, the Whispers were covering Midgar, so when Zack got ambushed by the Shinra troops and got beat up and exhausted, there were no additional reinforcements to kill Zack. So, I mean, if I read the cutscene right, so Zack survived, and that's amazing. Is Zack going to be a party member in Part 2? I'm still waiting for Yuffie. Because, honestly, Yuffie is one of my favorite Final Fantasy VII characters, but that's neither here nor there. So, there were a couple of things that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me from a gameplay design perspective. Like, you had to actively hold down a button to multicast heals outside of battle. And, sometimes you got hardcore railroaded for no reason other than because we said so. And I'm not a fan of that at all. So, it's not a perfect game. I don't know what the critics are saying about Final Fantasy VII. I might look that up just out of curiosity after this, but I personally thought, yeah, I'm glad I played this. Pretty good game. enough divergences in the plot to make it stand alone as its own thing, but enough similarities to the original where you can tell that it is a remake. And I think that's probably the middle ground most remakes should strive for in the event that a remake is needed. Because I know more than one person was calling the Final Fantasy remake a cash grab or some such. And, well, I just didn't see it. And I'm glad I didn't see it that way because it didn't mar my appreciation for the product that we actually got. Which, again, I thought was good, but also, again, I'm a very easily pleased person. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt. And, so, the game itself, good. What about my experiences recording it? By and large, the recordings itself weren't too bad. Towards the beginning, there were some hiccups that I still don't know how they happened. But eventually, I discovered workarounds, and those mysterious problems vanished of their own accord, so what do I know? But, yeah, I was able to get each episode out more or less on time, and that's great. There was no great... I only lost the data once. I only had to reconstruct the data once. And everything else was just a matter of me not losing my mind. Which towards the end there I almost did very much lose my mind. And, let's see. The hardest part, I think, of recording this wound up being because my laptop started falling apart. And I had to send it in for repairs because, heaven forbid, a laptop lasts more than 6 months. Okay, that's not being entirely fair. I bought the laptop in December of last year, and it started falling apart in July, and I sent it in for repair at the very end of July, so, but that's just me complaining about things that aren't important to the after action report. So, yeah, I think I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about. So, where are we going from here? As I said at the end of the last episode of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm intending to do Sly 2 Band of Thieves next. So, because I figure, with it being 2 years, it's about time for me to hit up the next game in the trilogy. I know it's not a trilogy. I know it's a quadfecta. But seriously, it should have stayed a trilogy. But that's just me, an opinion I can get onto when eventually I do get to Sly 4. Because Sly 4 is one of the rare games that I actually can't really stand. Oh well. Anyway, Final Fantasy VII Remake, very good. Everything, good, yay. Glad I played it. Glad I got to share my experience going in blind with you. And yeah, so in 2 days' time, I will be releasing the first episode of my next Let's Play as usual. So until then, remember to like, comment, subscribe, ring the little bell, and if you'd be so kind, get off my lawn, you filthy casuals.